00:15 hours, March 10, 1945, 53rd Air Regiment Forward Airfield, Kanto Plain. Lieutenant Hiroshi Nakamura stands beside his Kawasaki Ki-45 Toryu night fighter. The twin-engine interceptor's 20mm cannon gleaming under blackout-dimmed maintenance lights. Radio chatter crackles through the command bunker. 279 Boeing B-29 Superfortresses are inbound carrying 1,665 tons of M69 Napalm Incendiary bomblets. Each hexagonal steel tube weighing 6 pounds and filled with jellied gasoline. The goal is surgical silence Tokyo's industrial heart and demonstrate that no Japanese city can survive America's new incendiary warfare doctrine. Nakamura's hands shake as he adjusts his flight helmet, the leather worn smooth by months of futile night intercepts against the silver giants that have been systematically destroying Japan's cities. The 53rd Air Regiment had been hastily converted from day fighter operations to specialized night interception in January 1945. Their 25 Ki-45 Toryu and Ki-84 Hayate fighters representing the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force's last desperate attempt to contest American air supremacy over the home islands. Tonight would prove the final test of whether Japan's exhausted defenders could prevent the complete incineration of their capital. The M69 Incendiary bomblet had been designed specifically to destroy Japanese urban areas by Standard Oil Development Company, funded by the Office of Scientific Research and Development under the Manhattan Project's lesser-known cousin program. Each bomb measured 3 inches in hexagonal diameter and 20 inches in length, containing napalm that would spread burning gel up to 100 feet in every direction upon detonation. Packed 38 per cluster in E-46 aimable cluster bombs, they were nicknamed Tokyo calling cards by American bomber crews who had tested them against mock Japanese villages at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, where they achieved a 68% building destruction rate within 6 minutes. Major General Curtis LeMay's tactical revolution stripped the B-29s of all defensive armament except tail guns, reducing weight by 7,000 pounds per aircraft to carry maximum incendiary loads. The Superfortresses would attack at night from 5,000 to 8,000 feet altitude, flying individually rather than in formation to maximize bomb load efficiency and minimize fuel consumption. American intelligence estimated that Japanese air defenses possessed only 2 night fighter units with fewer than 50 aircraft total, making the low-level nocturnal attack tactically feasible despite increased exposure to anti-aircraft fire. Nakamura climbs into his Ki-45's cramped cockpit, the instrument panel's radium dials casting an eerie green glow across his face. The twin Mitsubishi Ha-102 engines rumble to life with a deep growl that reverberates across the darkened airfield. As the flight leader of the 53rd Air Regiment's 3rd Squadron, Nakamura carries the weight of defending 37 million civilians packed into Tokyo's wooden houses and paper walls. His aircraft is equipped with primitive radar and armed with a 37mm cannon in the nose plus 2 20mm cannons. Ammunition carefully hoarded for weeks in anticipation of this moment. The American formation approaches from the southeast, 334 B-29s launched from Saipan, Tinian, and Guam in the Mariana Islands. Pathfinder aircraft lead the attack, carrying M47 napalm bombs to create a blazing X pattern over the Shitamachi district's working-class neighborhoods. The lead Superfortresses drop their incendiaries at exactly 00:15 hours, each cluster bomb opening at 2,000 feet altitude to release 38 individual M69 bomblets trailing white cotton streamers for stability. Upon impact, each bomblet waits 3 to 5 seconds before a white phosphorus charge explosively propels burning napalm in a horizontal stream that can travel 300 feet, instantly igniting wooden structures and creating multiple fire points that overwhelm firefighting capabilities. Nakamura's Ki-45 climbs steeply through the night air, his radar operator Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto scanning the primitive AI Mark IV radar screen for contact signatures. The Japanese air defense network consisted of 8 anti-aircraft regiments with 780 guns total, but only 331 heavy and 307 light anti-aircraft guns were positioned around Tokyo itself. Fire control equipment remained primitive compared to American systems, with short-range radar and unsophisticated targeting mechanisms that performed poorly in night conditions. The 10th Air Division's 210 combat aircraft were mostly day fighters unsuited for nocturnal interception, leaving the specialized night fighter squadrons critically outnumbered. The first B-29s appear on Yamamoto's radar screen as faint blips moving at 180 miles per hour toward the city center. Nakamura banks his fighter into an intercept course, the twin engines straining to reach the bomber's altitude before they complete their attack runs. Below, Tokyo's civilian population receives its first air raid warnings at 008 hours. But the city's inadequate shelter system can accommodate only 90,000 people out of 37 million residents. Most buildings are constructed of wood and paper, making them perfect kindling for the napalm-fueled conflagration that is about to engulf 16 square miles of the metropolitan area. Radio reports flood the 53rd Air Regiment's frequency as Japanese radar stations attempt to coordinate the defense. The American bombers are flying at altitudes between 5,000 and 8,000 feet, well below their normal operational ceiling of 30,000 feet, confusing Japanese gunners who have trained to engage high-altitude targets. Anti-aircraft fire erupts across the city in ragged patterns, searchlight beams sweeping frantically through the darkness as the first incendiary clusters detonate with brilliant flashes that instantly transform night into day. Each M69 bomblet burns at temperatures reaching 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt steel and turn human bodies to ash within seconds. Nakamura spots his first target through the canopy, a Boeing B-29 45 BW Superfortress with the distinctive squared tail and right R-3350 engines, flying straight and level through moderate anti-aircraft fire. The bomber's silvered aluminum skin reflects the growing firestorm below as its crew prepares to drop their deadly cargo. Nakamura arms his cannons and begins his attack approach, knowing that he must achieve a killing shot on the first pass, since the B-29's defensive firepower and speed advantage make multiple attacks nearly impossible for his aging interceptor. The M69 bomblets continue raining down across Shitamachi's densely packed neighborhoods, each impact point becoming the center of an expanding circle of fire that spreads at walking pace through the wooden buildings. Individual fires merge into larger conflagrations within minutes, creating the conditions for a true firestorm with self-sustaining convection currents that generate their own weather patterns. Surface winds of 30 knots fan the flames horizontally while superheated air rises in columns that reach 20,000 feet altitude, creating massive thermal updrafts that buffet the attacking bombers and make accurate navigation difficult for follow-on waves. Lieutenant Yamamoto calls out range and bearing information as Nakamura closes to firing distance. The Ki-45's 37mm cannon loaded with high explosive rounds capable of penetrating the B-29's aluminum structure. The bomber's tail gunner spots their approach and opens fire with twin 50-caliber machine guns, red tracers streaming past the fighter's cockpit in deadly streams. Nakamura fires a 3-second burst from maximum range, his shells bracketing the Superfortress but failing to score solid hits as the bomber's pilot throws his aircraft into evasive maneuvers despite the heavy bomb load. Below them, the firestorm consumes entire city blocks with mechanical precision. The M69's jellied gasoline formulation adheres to whatever surface it strikes, burning continuously for 8 to 10 minutes per bomblet, while generating temperatures that instantaneously ignite any combustible material within a 100-foot radius. Firefighting efforts prove completely inadequate as the city's 6,000 professional firefighters find their equipment overwhelmed by the sheer scale of simultaneous ignition points. Water pressure drops to useless levels as wooden water mains burn through, while fire trucks become trapped by debris and spreading flames that advance faster than evacuation efforts can proceed. Nakamura attempts a second attack run on the damaged B-29, his fighter's engines running at maximum power to match the bomber's speed. The American aircraft's defensive gunners maintain accurate fire despite the turbulence from the firestorm below, their training and equipment superiority becoming evident as 50-caliber bullets punch through the Ki-45's thin aluminum skin. Yamamoto reports multiple system failures as hydraulic fluid sprays across the rear cockpit, but Nakamura presses his attack despite the mounting damage to his aircraft. The effectiveness of America's M69 incendiary warfare becomes horrifyingly clear as entire districts disappear beneath expanding seas of flame. Each E-46 cluster bomb releases its 38 bomblets across a wide dispersal pattern, ensuring that no building within the target area escapes ignition. The napalm's adhesive properties mean that fire spreads not just horizontally across roof surfaces but vertically through multi-story structures, creating multiple ignition points that overwhelm any attempts at containment. Civilian casualties mount exponentially as escape routes become blocked by debris and flame, trapping families in wooden buildings that offer no protection against 2,000-degree temperatures. Radio transmissions from other 53rd Air Regiment fighters reveal the scale of the disaster unfolding across Tokyo's airspace. Of the 25 night fighters launched to intercept the American formation, only 7 managed to engage targets before being overwhelmed by defensive fire or forced to break off due to fuel limitations. The B-29's removal of most defensive armament allows them to carry 40% more incendiary bombs while reducing their vulnerability to fighter attack, since the reduced weight increases their speed and maneuverability advantage over Japanese interceptors. Nakamura's third attack run brings him within 200 yards of his target B-29, close enough to see the bomber crew's faces through their cockpit windows as they struggle to maintain level flight through the violent thermal currents rising from the burning city. His 37mm cannon fires its final rounds, the high-explosive shells detonating against the Superfortress's port wing route and severing hydraulic lines that cause the bomber to lose altitude slowly. But the damage proves insufficient to down the aircraft, which continues its bomb run despite trailing smoke and fuel vapor from punctured tanks. The M69 bomblets' delayed action fuses ensure maximum psychological impact by creating false hope among civilians who initially believe they have escaped the attack. Each bomblet lies dormant for 3 to 5 seconds after impact, allowing people to approach what appears to be unexploded ordnance before the white phosphorus charge detonates and spreads burning napalm across a wide area. This design feature maximizes casualties among civilian firefighters and rescue workers who rush to aid victims of the initial bombing, effectively targeting the population most capable of organizing effective resistance to the incendiary attack. Lieutenant Yamamoto reports that his radar has failed completely, leaving them to hunt for targets visually in the smoke and confusion of the developing firestorm. The thermal columns rising from the burning city create dangerous flying conditions that claim several Japanese fighters when pilots lose control in the violent updrafts. Surface winds now exceed 40 miles per hour as the firestorm generates its own weather system, with temperatures at ground level reaching 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in the most intense burning areas. Nakamura spots another B-29 silhouetted against the orange glow of the burning city, this aircraft flying lower and slower than the first target as it completes its incendiary drop over the residential districts. The bomber's bomb bay doors remain open as it releases its final cluster bombs, each E-46 container adding another 38 M69 bomblets to the inferno below. Nakamura attacks from a shallow angle, hoping to avoid the defensive fire that has already damaged his fighters' control surfaces and punctured several fuel lines. The effectiveness of General LeMay's tactical innovation becomes undeniable as the attack proceeds with minimal American losses. Only 12 B-29s are shot down by Japanese anti-aircraft fire, with none falling to fighter attack despite the defenders' desperate efforts. The removal of defensive gunners and armament allows each bomber to carry 1,520 M69 bomblets instead of the normal high-explosive load, multiplying the destructive potential of each aircraft by factors that overwhelm Japanese urban firefighting capabilities completely. Nakamura's Ki-45 shudders under the impact of defensive fire from his second target, 50 caliber bullets punching through the fighter's engine nacelles and cockpit armor. Yamamoto cries out as shrapnel from an exploding instrument panel cuts across his face, blood spattering the radar screen that has already failed from electrical damage. The twin engines begin running rough as fuel pumps fail and oil pressure drops, forcing Nakamura to consider whether to attempt one final attack run or break off to preserve his aircraft for future missions. Below them, the firestorm reaches its peak intensity as individual fires merge into a single conflagration covering 158 square miles of central Tokyo. The M69's napalm formulation burns completely, leaving no unburned residue that might smother surrounding fires, ensuring that the incendiary effect spreads to maximum extent before fuel exhaustion occurs. Civilian casualties rise beyond 80,000 dead within the first 2 hours as escape routes become blocked by debris and flame, while another 1 million residents lose their homes to the systematically advancing fire front. The 53rd Air Regiment's remaining fighters begin running low on fuel and ammunition as the American attack enters its final phase. Of the original 25 interceptors launched, fewer than 10 remain airworthy, with several having crashed due to battle damage or pilot error in the difficult flying conditions created by the firestorm. Japanese radar stations have lost contact with most defending aircraft, leaving individual pilots to fight isolated engagements against numerically superior opponents, equipped with better defensive armament and fire control systems. Nakamura makes his final attack on the damaged B-29, his fighter's engines failing as oil pressure drops to zero and coolant temperatures exceed operational limits. The bomber crew has already completed their incendiary drop and begun their return flight to the Mariana Islands, leaving behind a city that will burn for 3 more days despite every firefighting effort Japanese authorities can organize. The Ki-45's 20mm cannons fire their last ammunition as Nakamura passes within 100 feet of the superfortress, close enough to see the bomber's crew celebrating their successful mission. The tactical effectiveness of America's M69 incendiary campaign represents a revolution in strategic bombing doctrine, achieving destruction levels that exceed high explosive attacks by orders of magnitude while requiring fewer aircraft and crew resources. Each bomblet costs approximately $6 to manufacture but generates damage equivalent to multiple high-explosive bombs costing hundreds of dollars each. The psychological impact on Japanese civilian morale proves equally devastating as the physical destruction, demonstrating that American industrial capacity can produce incendiary weapons in quantities sufficient to burn every major Japanese city completely. Lieutenant Yamamoto attempts to guide Nakamura back to their base airfield, but both engines seize simultaneously as connecting rods fail from oil starvation and overheating. The Ki-45 begins an unpowered glide toward the burning city below, its pilot forced to choose between attempting a dead stick, landing on a darkened runway, or ejecting over the firestorm that his efforts have failed to prevent. Radio transmissions from surviving 53rd Air Regiment fighters reveal similar mechanical failures and fuel exhaustion among the defending force, leaving Tokyo's airspace effectively uncontested for the remainder of the American attack. Nakamura struggles to maintain control as hydraulic pressure fails completely, forcing him to rely on manual flight controls that require enormous physical strength to operate. The firestorm below illuminates the countryside for miles in every direction, creating a false dawn that reveals the scale of destruction achieved by America's incendiary warfare doctrine. Individual buildings are no longer visible through the smoke and flame, replaced by a uniform orange glow that marks the complete incineration of 16 square miles of urban area. The M69 bomblets continue detonating throughout the target area as delayed action fuses trigger final waves of incendiary ignition. Each bomblet's white phosphorus charge propels burning napalm across surfaces that have already been heated beyond ignition temperature, ensuring that every combustible material within the target zone contributes to the growing conflagration. The jellied gasoline formulation adheres to metal surfaces and human skin with equal effectiveness, making escape impossible for anyone caught within the bomblet's lethal radius during detonation. Nakamura attempts an emergency landing at an auxiliary airstrip north of Tokyo, but his fighter's damaged landing gear fails to extend properly and fuel vapor ignition destroys the aircraft during touchdown. Both crew members survive the crash but suffer severe burns from burning aviation fuel that ignites their flight suits. Lieutenant Yamamoto dies from his injuries 3 days later, becoming one of thousands of Japanese casualties attributable to the M69 incendiary attack on Tokyo. The 53rd Air Regiment's surviving pilots gather at dawn on March 10th to assess the night's losses and the effectiveness of their defensive efforts. Of the 25 fighters launched to intercept Operation Meetinghouse, only 8 returned to base in flyable condition, with total Japanese air losses including 14 aircraft destroyed and 7 pilots killed. American losses amount to 12 B-29s shot down by anti-aircraft fire and 2 written off due to battle damage, representing a loss rate of less than 4% despite flying through intense defensive fire at low altitude. Major General LeMay's tactical assessment proves accurate in every respect. Japanese night fighter defenses lack the numbers, equipment, and coordination necessary to contest large-scale incendiary attacks effectively. The removal of defensive armament from attacking bombers reduces their vulnerability to fighter attack while maximizing their incendiary carrying capacity, creating conditions for systematic urban destruction that overwhelm Japanese firefighting capabilities completely. The success of Operation Meetinghouse establishes incendiary warfare as the primary American strategic bombing doctrine for the remainder of the Pacific War. The firestorm continues burning throughout March 10th, consuming wooden buildings, industrial facilities, and residential districts with mechanical precision. Fire departments from surrounding cities provide assistance, but their equipment proves inadequate against fires that generate their own weather patterns and defeat conventional firefighting techniques. Water pressure throughout central Tokyo drops to useless levels as wooden water mains burn through, while rubble and debris block access routes that might allow fire trucks to reach burning areas. Nakamura recovers from his injuries in a military hospital 20 miles from Tokyo, the ward filled with burn victims from the civilian population who were caught in the M69 bomblets' incendiary effects. Medical supplies remain critically short due to systematic American bombing of pharmaceutical factories, while morphine and other pain medications are unavailable except for the most severe cases. The hospital's windows face east toward Tokyo, providing a constant view of the smoke column that continues rising from the burning city. Japanese military analysts study captured M69 bomblets to understand the technical innovations that make American incendiary weapons so devastatingly effective. The hexagonal steel construction provides optimal packing density within cluster bombs while ensuring proper aerodynamic stability during descent. The napalm filler burns at consistent temperature and duration regardless of weather conditions, while the white phosphorus ignition system guarantees reliable detonation even when bomblets impact soft surfaces or water. The psychological impact of the Tokyo firebombing spreads throughout Japanese society as refugees flee the burning city carrying first-hand accounts of the incendiary attack's effectiveness. Government censorship prevents accurate casualty reporting, but word-of-mouth descriptions of the M69 bomblets' effects create widespread panic among civilian populations in other major cities. Industrial workers begin abandoning factories in urban areas, seeking refuge in rural districts that offer some protection against American firebombing campaigns. Operation Meetinghouse demonstrates that American industrial capacity can produce incendiary weapons in quantities sufficient to destroy every major Japanese city systematically. Standard Oil Development Company's manufacturing facilities produce M69 bomblets at rates exceeding 50,000 units per month, while Boeing and other aircraft manufacturers deliver B-29s faster than Japanese fighter production can replace defensive losses. The mathematical relationship between American production capacity and Japanese defensive capabilities makes continued resistance economically impossible. Nakamura returns to flight duty in late March 1945, assigned to a reconstituted night fighter squadron equipped with the few remaining Ki-45 and Ki-84 aircraft available to the 53rd Air Regiment. American incendiary attacks continue against Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe, and other major cities, each raid following the proven tactical pattern established during Operation Meetinghouse. Japanese air defenses prove consistently unable to inflict significant losses on attacking formations, while American bomber crews gain experience that makes subsequent missions even more efficient. The M69 incendiary bomblets design represents the culmination of extensive research into optimal methods for destroying Japanese urban areas. Testing at Dugway Proving Ground utilized authentic Japanese building materials and construction techniques to ensure maximum effectiveness against wood and paper structures typical of Japanese cities. The napalm formulation burns completely without generating excessive smoke that might interfere with bombing accuracy, while the delayed action fuse maximizes psychological impact on civilian populations. Japanese military leadership recognizes that continued American incendiary attacks will render organized resistance impossible by destroying the industrial base necessary to maintain military operations. The 53rd Air Regiment and other defensive units receive orders to conserve aircraft and fuel for kamikaze attacks against the anticipated American invasion, effectively abandoning air defense missions in favor of suicide tactics. This strategic shift acknowledges that Japanese air forces cannot contest American air superiority over the home islands. By April 1945, systematic American firebombing has destroyed more than 40% of the built-up area in Japan's 6 largest cities, with Tokyo suffering 60% destruction from multiple incendiary attacks. The M69 bomblet proves so effective that American forces exhaust their supply of incendiary weapons and must pause operations to allow manufacturing facilities to replenish inventories. This tactical pause provides temporary relief for Japanese urban areas, but does not address the fundamental imbalance between American offensive capabilities and Japanese defensive resources. Nakamura participates in increasingly desperate interception missions as American B-29s continue systematic destruction of Japanese industrial capacity. Each encounter reinforces the lesson learned during Operation Meetinghouse. Japanese fighters cannot significantly impact American bombing operations when attacking formations equipped with adequate defensive firepower and supported by electronic countermeasures. The removal of B-29 defensive armament proves unnecessary as Japanese air opposition becomes negligible due to fuel shortages and pilot losses. The cumulative effect of multiple incendiary attacks destroys Japan's capacity to maintain organized military resistance. Factories producing aircraft, ammunition, and other military supplies are systematically targeted and destroyed by M69 bomblets that generate fires too intense for any firefighting effort to control. Transportation networks collapse as railway stations and marshalling yards burn, while port facilities become unusable due to rubble and debris from surrounding urban areas. Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle's assessment of Japanese defensive capabilities proves prophetic. The Japanese have excellent individual pilots but lack the industrial base and training infrastructure necessary to replace losses on the scale that modern warfare demands. By May 1945, the 53rd Air Regiment operates fewer than 6 aircraft, with fuel rationing limiting training flights to absolute minimum levels. Pilot quality deteriorates rapidly as experienced aviators are killed or injured, while replacement training programs lack adequate fuel and aircraft to maintain proficiency standards. The final M69 incendiary attacks in July 1945 target smaller Japanese cities that had previously been considered secondary objectives. These raids demonstrate that American production capacity exceeds Japanese defensive capabilities by margins that make continued resistance mathematically impossible. Each B-29 Superfortress carries sufficient incendiary bomblets to destroy several city blocks completely, while Japanese forces lack sufficient interceptors to engage even a fraction of attacking formations. Nakamura's last combat mission occurs on August 9, 1945, when the 53rd Air Regiment launches its remaining 3 aircraft to intercept a formation of B-29s approaching from the south. The mission is aborted when radio reports confirm that Nagasaki has been destroyed by a single atomic bomb, making conventional air defense missions pointless against weapons that can annihilate entire cities instantly. The regiment's surviving pilots return to base knowing that organized resistance has become impossible. The effectiveness of America's M69 incendiary warfare campaign exceeds every tactical prediction made by strategic bombing advocates. Total Japanese casualties from firebombing operations reach approximately 330,000 dead and 8 million homeless, figures that surpass the combined effects of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The systematic destruction of urban areas eliminates Japan's capacity to support prolonged military operations while demonstrating American ability to destroy Japanese civilization completely if necessary. Emperor Hirohito's surrender announcement on August 15, 1945, acknowledges that the enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, but makes no specific reference to the incendiary weapons that have already destroyed most of Japan's major cities. The M69 bomblet's tactical success establishes incendiary warfare as a dominant strategic bombing doctrine that influences military planning for decades afterward, proving that properly designed area weapons can achieve political objectives more efficiently than precision attacks against specific targets. Nakamura participates in the formal surrender ceremonies as a representative of Japan's surviving air defense forces, standing among the few dozen pilots who witnessed the systematic destruction of their nation's cities by American incendiary weapons. The M69 bomblets that silenced Japan's air defenses during Operation Meetinghouse represent more than a tactical innovation. They demonstrate industrial warfare's capacity to achieve complete victory through the systematic application of superior productive capacity against an economically weaker opponent. The lessons of incendiary warfare learned during the Pacific conflict reshape strategic bombing doctrine for the emerging Cold War period. American military planners recognize that weapons combining high production rates with devastating area effects can achieve political objectives more efficiently than precision attacks requiring expensive guidance systems and specialized aircraft. The M69 incendiary bomblet's success establishes jellied gasoline as the optimal filler for area weapons designed to destroy urban targets, a lesson that influences napalm development for subsequent conflicts. Post-war analysis reveals that Operation Meetinghouse and subsequent incendiary attacks destroyed Japanese war production capacity more effectively than precision bombing campaigns against specific industrial targets. The systematic burning of urban areas eliminates not only factories but also the transportation networks, utilities, and worker housing necessary to maintain industrial operations. This comprehensive approach to strategic bombing achieves campaign objectives with fewer aircraft and crew losses than precision attacks that require multiple missions against hardened targets. The 53rd Air Regiment's official records document the complete inadequacy of Japanese air defenses against American incendiary warfare tactics. Despite advance warning and specialized night fighter training, defending forces achieve negligible success against formations using proper electronic countermeasures and tactical procedures. The mathematical relationship between attacking and defending capabilities demonstrates that technological and industrial superiority can overcome numerical advantages when properly applied through systematic operational planning. Nakamura's post-war testimony to American intelligence officers provides detailed insight into Japanese defensive preparations and their failure during Operation Meetinghouse. His account emphasizes the psychological impact of witnessing systematic urban destruction achieved through weapons designed specifically to maximize civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. The M69 bomblet's effectiveness stems not just from its incendiary properties, but from its role in comprehensive bombing campaigns that target entire economic systems rather than individual military objectives. The Strategic Bombing Survey concludes that incendiary weapons like the M69 achieve more cost-effective destruction than conventional high-explosive bombs when used against appropriate targets. Japanese urban areas proved ideally suited for incendiary attack due to wood construction and high population density, conditions that maximize the weapon's area effects while minimizing defensive countermeasures. American success in the Pacific demonstrates that strategic bombing can achieve complete victory when weapon selection matches target characteristics and industrial production capacity exceeds enemy replacement capabilities. Nakamura returns to civilian life as a commercial pilot, flying domestic routes over cities that remain scarred by incendiary bombing 20 years after the war's end. The systematic destruction achieved by M69 bomblets during Operation Meetinghouse and subsequent raids permanently altered Japan's urban landscape while demonstrating the decisive impact of weapons designed for maximum area effect. The silence imposed on Japanese air defenses by American incendiary warfare represents one of the most complete tactical victories in aviation history, achieved through the systematic application of superior technology and industrial capacity against an economically weaker opponent.